Hi there, I'm Mary Susie from Bead Me a Story, and today I'm going to be teaching you the Viperscale weave using closed jump rings. So whenever I say closed jump rings, that means that we can use rubber O-rings, which also make this weave stretchy. And I am going to show this version of this mainly because it's multicolored and I want you to be able to really see clearly each of the steps that I'm doing and how to do them. When I first discovered this, I just happened onto it when I was trying to teach myself another weave. And then later on, having had this little sample made up, I went to look to see if I could find a tutorial or something out there for doing this. And honestly, everything I found was just so difficult that I went back to my little rubber and metal version of it and kept working with that until I figured out the easiest path. And I've been doing it this way ever since. So I've taught a lot of beginners how to do this. This is more of an intermediate project. You should have learned European 4-in-1 before attempting this, but honestly, this isn't that difficult when you do this with closed rings. When you do it with all jump rings that are all open, one jump ring at a time, I think it's extremely difficult. But when you do it this way, I think it's very easy, and most beginner chainmailers can probably jump up to intermediate and be able to do this version of this weave. So I hope that this will all make sense to you and that this weave will click for you and you'll be able to do it. I just want to show you this is a single color version. This is seafoam and our dusky sage green, and this is our micro version, which is made using our 7.4mm O-rings, and I used 20 gauge 3/16 jump rings. Now for our project today, you can see this is a much chunkier bracelet. I'll just show you these side by side, the difference in size. So whatever you prefer to wear is fine, but I would say that for learning this the first time around, it's nice to use these 12mm O-rings. I'm using them along with a 16 gauge 5/16 jump ring, and these are nice and chunky. It's easy to see everything, and it's really easy to get started using larger sizes, and then once you're comfortable, you can jump down to a size that's a little bit smaller. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start this weave, you'll notice that I laid out all that we're going to use for our first few rows, and I'll just show you up here that we're using silver and powder blue, and then we've got champagne or brown bronze could be used too, and rust. And then we've got gunmetal and deep amethyst, okay? And I've laid these out the way that we're gonna put this together. So let me kind of push this out of the way. And I also have here a red and a couple of buttercup colored O-rings. So these we're gonna use to start the first row, but we're not gonna need them again later. We're going to actually end up taking them off. So for our very first step, what we want to do is take our red jump ring, which again, we're going to take that off later. We're going to pick up those 2 yellow rings, and then I'm going to start with my first row that's actually going to be part of the bracelet, and that would be my powder blue O-rings. I'm going to close this jump ring. Actually, I shouldn't worry too much about the closure here. Like I keep saying, it's gonna be taken off, so not a big deal if it's not closed well. Okay, so I'm gonna lay down my work like this. And you can see that this is just the start of European 4-in-1 basically. So please, please, you should know European 4-in-1 before approaching this weave. This is a much more intermediate weave, and if you understand the principles of that, you're gonna get along really well with this. If you don't fully understand European 4-in-1, then this might be more of a challenge for you, okay? So go back to that if you haven't done European 4-in-1 yet. Okay, so to start our first real row with a real jump ring that's gonna belong in the piece, the first thing I wanna do is I'm gonna take this center ring. All these three are the same. I'm just grabbing the center so that you know where this is gonna be oriented in the weave. And I'm going to pass down through the bottom blue and come back up through the top blue. And then I'm gonna pick up 2 O-rings in the next color, which in this case is rust. And then I'm gonna close this jump ring. Now I can pick those both up at the beginning, those rubber O-rings. I just want to really illustrate what's happening in each step for you. So there's of course faster ways to do this, and I'd imagine that most of you who are trying this are more of intermediate chain millers. So let me just turn this around. This wasn't lining up straight, so there we go. Okay, so now we have basically 2 rows of your European 4-in-1 going on. And I just want you to notice that the way that these jump rings are laying is kind of a backward C, okay? They're not tilted up on the left and down on the right. They're tilted up on the right and down left, okay? And that's really important that we pay attention to all the angles that are happening with this, because it's gonna be very important. Now this next ring that we're doing is actually the very hardest in the entire piece. So just bear with this first step, because once you get this ring put in place, everything from here on out is gonna get just a little bit easier. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm cramming this top powder blue on top of, I'm pushing it over so it's kind of laying on top of the powder blue that's nearer to me. And I'm gonna do the same thing with these rust rings. I'm going to push the one that's further away from me on top of the one that's closer to me. Okay, and then I'm gonna pick up my next ring that I want to use. And basically I need to be really careful when I pick this up, because I want to make sure to pick this up where this all maintains itself. And I'm going to be passing through the eye, not only of this rust pair, but also through the eye of this powder blue pair. And if you don't know what an eye is, I'll just real quickly show you here. These purple ones are just sitting here. So the eye is the intersection between these 2 rings. So see how I have this laying on top of the other one? And that is the eye, that's that space right in there. So in my next ring, what I need to do is I need to pass through both eyes of the rust and the powder blue, or color B and color A, okay? So I'm gonna pass through here. And so you saw how I picked that up with my thumb on top, and I'm holding it underneath to make sure this is all staying in a nice placement for me. I'm gonna go through the eye and through the eye. And also at the same time, you'll just see that I'm actually passing through this color A jump ring, or in this case, silver. I'm passing through that as well. And that's really important to make sure that you pass through that ring. Okay? And now that it's through, before I close this, I'm gonna let this ring kind of pull up to the top here. Okay? So it's on the side. It'll be easier to close over there. Okay, and as promised, now that I've finished this ring, this is going to kind of hold things in place. So when we go to do the next ring, it's going to be a lot easier, because you can see that it's holding these eyes in the center in place because we passed through it. So now there's going to be one more jump ring in this row. This is our color A jump ring. And again, we're gonna go through the B O-rings through the I and through the A O-rings through the I. And we're also gonna pass through this center ring as well when we do this. And the only difference is on this row, we stayed at the top, and then this time we're gonna let this fold down towards the bottom. Okay, so through this eye, and then through this second eye. So see how it's going through both the rust and the powder blue, and then it's coming around in the same position that this other one was. It's just on the other side of the work. Okay, so just so you can see, this is what this looks like on the front. And then if I flip it over, this is what it would look like on the back. Okay, you can see that it's coming out through this silver ring back here. Okay, and now we're ready for our next row. So once again, we're going through for the middle ring first. So I'm going to pass down through this one that's closer to me, come back up out of the one that's farther away from me, which is also incidentally sitting above. We're gonna now pick up our C colored O-rings. And I'm gonna close my jump ring. Okay, so that is our middle ring. So if you look back at this previous row, that's gonna be this ring here. And then once again, I wanna overlap my rings. Those rust you can see are holding in place. But this new row, I kind of have to hold it in place to get it started. And then once again, I'm gonna pass down through the eye of this color C pair of O-rings, and then down through the eye of the B O-rings, or the rust O-rings. So see how that's coming through? And then see how I'm back behind this ring here. So I pass through this champagne colored ring. And that's on the back that I was looking at that. Okay, so I'm gonna close this. And this ring, of course, is sitting towards the top. I recommend that as you do each row, just because these two rings kind of match each other, you can see that this one sits just slightly up from this one down here, and that's because I'm placing it first each time. So just try and keep track that you're doing the top and then the bottom. Okay, and now I'm passing through the eye again. I'm passing through the eye of the rust, and I'm coming out behind this middle jump ring. And that's another row. Okay. Now the way I plan this out, this is 3 color scenario. So I have 3 colors of jump rings and 3 colors of O-rings. So when we get to the end, this is where we're gonna wanna stop. Okay, so this is one segment here. And when we get to the very end, we're gonna wanna be on this color C jump ring in order to attach it back to the beginning. Because you can see that this was our color A jump ring. Our silver was our first real jump ring color. We're gonna remove that red. So when we get to the end, we should be right here in order to connect this back to the start. But in the meantime, we're gonna keep working. So my next row that I would be doing is going to be the powder blue with the gunmetal, and I'm gonna do this the exact same way I've been doing it. Okay, I'm gonna pass down through the deep amethyst and come back up out of the one that's farther away from me. I'm gonna pick up 2 O-rings of the next color. Now I'm back to my color A rings. I'm gonna close this jump ring. Okay, so we're just like before, we're gonna take this ring, we're gonna pass down through these new A rings, we're gonna pass through the 2 C rings, which is our purple, and then we're gonna be behind this middle ring that we just added, okay? And then we'll close our jump ring. And I'm gonna let that swing to the top, okay? See how my blue rings are still in the right orientation. And then I'm gonna pass down through the eye of the purple rings again and behind that other gunmetal ring. Okay, so we're just gonna keep going just the same way that I've been showing you. Okay, so you can see that we're at the length we need our bracelet to be. And I've removed these this first jump ring and 2 O-rings that we used to start with a European 4-in-1 and work it into a Viperscale. And now I'm gonna take, I think I told you before, we're gonna keep our gunmetal jump rings for the end, for the last row. And you can see I'm ending on purple, and at the beginning here, here's the blue. So you can see our sequence of 3 colors is all matching up. And basically I'm gonna pass down through the purple ring that's closer to me and up out of the one that's farther away from me. This is just like before, just like during doing a European 4-in-1. Okay, I'm gonna pass up through this blue that's closer to me and then pass up through the blue that's farther from me. So instead of just picking up 2 new rings, we're just passing these through the first row of the work. Okay, so that part's simple enough. Now, this next part isn't really all that challenging either. The only word of caution I would give you is, you know, make sure that your rings are open enough. You might want to open them just a little bit more than usual, not a whole lot, but just enough to make sure that we can slide through a couple rows of work. And so basically, this is just like before. So we would have added the blue. So we're gonna pass down through the eye of the 2 blue rings. Okay, so get that through there. You see, all I'm passing through is that eye. Now pass through the eye of the purple rings, and at the same time, we're passing through this gunmetal ring right here on the back side, which is going to allow us to have that sitting where it needs to be. Okay, and see how I've passed through the eye of the purple on the back. Okay, and then just close that ring. So this isn't necessarily any more difficult than any other row we were doing. It may be a little bit harder to reach, but other than that, it's really about the same thing. Just gonna bring this next ring in here. So this is the same thing, and you see I'm just aiming for this other side. So I'm gonna, again, pass down through the eye of the blue, come back up through the eye between these purple rings, and I'm letting it also come to the back of the gunmetal ring, okay? And then that's it. We're gonna close this ring and we will have a completed bracelet. Okay, and there we go. So this is nice and thick, nice and sturdy, real heavy 16 gauge rings, but you can definitely make this smaller, and we can definitely do this with all metal rings as well. And the main difference with the all metal rings is that you could open all of them. But I have tried it this same way, and it works just great. I prefer the square jump rings with this to use in place of the rubber O-rings, and I pre-close those, and then that way all of my jump rings, as I put them in, this is just done the same exact way. I think this method is a lot easier to work than doing one jump ring at a time and having all the rings open, and it turns out beautifully. So once you learn to make this in multiple colors where you can really see all the steps, Of course, feel free to make it in just a single color of jump ring and a single color of O-ring, or you can play around even more with the colors and do some different things. So I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I hope I have simplified Viperscale for you so that it's actually a doable project. It is intermediate, so once again, just make sure that you're familiar with European 4-in-1, and then this one should be a cinch for you to make. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.